In previous demos, we saw how to build a REST view command to exchange data between Focal Point and Rational Team Concert or Rational Doors Next Generation Requirements Composer. And now we're going to look at how you explore the REST representation of the artifacts in CLM to understand more about what data is there. So in the REST view commands, we saw some pretty simple mapping. You could map the description and the title and whatnot. But sometimes it's a matter of drilling down into the resources beneath that artifact. So this work item is a resource, but it has not just properties, it has properties that are other resources that have their own properties, and there's a whole hierarchy there. We're going to see how you can explore that hierarchy using an interactive REST client. And in my case, I'm going to use Poster, which is a Mozilla Firefox add-on. But there are other clients available too. So let's start by getting the URL for this artifact in Rational Team Concert. I'm going to copy the link location. We did that with the REST view command as well. And I'm going to bring up Poster. Okay. So there's the URL to the resource. I need to authorize with an ID and password. And I also need to provide the headers, the same ones that we provided in the application RDF plus XML, content type, and OSLC core version. Okay, so I'm going to do a get on that artifact. And here's my results. So you can see that I have an XML representation here telling me information about this resource. And here is the resource right here, the work item 91. Now this is kind of hard to read in this little tiny scrolly window. So I'm going to just select it all, copy it, and paste it into Notepad. There we go. Okay, so that makes things a little more easy to read a little bit, and it allows me to do things like search. So let me just expand this a little bit more. So I can scroll through here and take a look at what we have. I can more or less read this description. The resource, that's the resource I was looking at. It's a subject, predicate, children, so it has children, and I can see this child. This is one of the children. It's work item 100. Okay, and there's the title of the child. So I can read through some of this, and I could just try and read through the entire representation if I wanted. I could come down. I can see a few more things. Here's the state. So let me highlight state for just a moment because it's interesting. Here you can see the state. It's not an attribute, or rather it's not a straight text value. It's actually a resource. It's an element in the workflow definition. So if I wanted to actually know what the value of the state is, I'm going to have to look at that resource. Now some of these other ones are simpler. If I look here, I've got the estimate. There's the value right there. So I could get the estimate very easily from this work item. I could get the due date, that's the next one, very easily. I could get a link to the owner. So again, that's a resource. So as I look through here, some things are very straightforward. Some other things are a little more complicated. Let's take a minute to drill down now into one of these resources. So we talked about state. So maybe I actually want to have the state of this work item included in Focal Point. So let's see what happens when I take a look at this particular resource. I'm going to come and copy the URL for that resource to this field here, and I'm going to do another get. Oh, and here it is. And so I can see that there's the description. This is the resource. You can see the group that it belongs to, so it's in the in progress group. Okay, so there's a set of statuses that are considered to be in progress. So when you do a query in RTC and you say what's in progress, it's going to include more than one actual status value. And if we come down here, here's the title. The title is implementing. So that's the status that we would probably want to bring back to Focal Point. And so then we just need to figure out, so we're not asking the work item for its status, we're asking the work item for the resource that represents its status, and we're asking that status resource for its title. So it's a little bit convoluted, but basically we're dropping down 2 levels. And it's a similar story when we look at something like progress tracking. So certainly in Gatto we did this, and I think it's a fairly common thing that people want to show what is the completion? How far done are we? What's the percent complete? So let's see if I say find, say complete. Well, there's nothing, right? Or percent. There's nothing. Or even completion. We'll try that. Still nothing. Yes, that's not surprising. And that's because it's not included in the work item itself, but rather in a progress tracking attribute. So, and how do I know that? Well, somebody might have told me at one point in time, but basically what happens is we scroll down through this set of things and we find out what attributes are here and we start to make connections. I'm going to show you that again in a minute when it comes to looking at schedule and planned work items. Okay, so I know that progress tracking is what we want, so let's okay. So it's an RTC extension, and we can see that this is the progress tracking resource for this artifact. So let's copy that, copy it in there, and we'll do another get. Okay, so here's the progress tracking attribute for this artifact, right? And so here we can see there's the work completed, and there's the number of items remaining, and there's the sizing units completed. So that's kind of interesting. So sizing units, what are sizing units? Well, let's see. There's the sizing unit short label, and it's points. So it's going to be story points. Okay, so that's how I know what I'm looking at here with the units completed. Interestingly, I also have things like items remaining effort estimated. So is effort estimated for all of the items that we have? Are their sizings estimated? Well, it looks like only 5 of them have sizings estimated. So this is kind of interesting information to know that it's available. Not necessarily that you're going to draw it all back to Focal Point, but it's interesting to know what you have, and then you can think about, is this data that I would want to use, and if so, how would I want to use it? Is it going to help me to give, for example, a confidence level or that sort of thing, right? And here again, we were talking about sizing units, and you can see the actual label, which is story points. So again, if we wanted to know the completion, the number of story points done and remaining for this work item and its children, we are not going to ask the work item. We're going to ask the progress tracking resource of the work item to tell us the sizing units completed and remaining. And I want to show one more example here because it was one that I came across most recently, and it was quite interesting, relating to schedule. When you use the traditional planning template and you look at a work item, you often see, or you can see, these fields that say planned start date and planned finish date. But when we look at the work item, let's see if we can find start dates. There are none. And finish date, not either. By end as well. Nope. And the reason, again, is because those aren't actually properties of the work item itself. What it is a property of the schedule for the work item, and the schedule is actually only associated with the work item if there's a snapshot associated with the work item. Because, of course, there is no start and end date. It's all based on iterations until you have, or no planned start and end dates, until you have something like a planned snapshot that actually captures a point-in-time view of where things are and how they're completed and what the expectation is for completing them. So here is the schedule resource associated with this work item. So let's take a look at what it includes. Again, I'm going to copy the URL. I'm going to put it in the URL field. I'm going to do a get. Okay, so here you can see, and I'm just going to spread that out a little bit so you can see it. It's a schedule resource. There's the type. And it's using the start and end dates of this particular snapshot. And there's a timestamp to it as well. So that's interesting to know. And there's the planned end date. And there's the planned start date. Oh, right there. Right. The interesting thing to note, though, is if there's no snapshot associated with the work item, then there's no values for any of this. And so if you're querying a work item that has no snapshot, you're not going to see any of this. So it's important to understand some of those aspects as well. You know, if there's no values, the attribute may not, or the property or the resource may not appear. Right? If there's no children work items, they're not going to have any entries for children work items. So when you query, when you're doing these queries, you want to make sure you're querying an artifact that has the type of properties that you are looking for or that you think you're looking for. This video has already gotten kind of long, so I'm going to wrap up here, and we'll do another short video to show how we can use the results of this to pull some data back. This notion of having two levels of resource that you need to query in order to get the values that you need. I'll also mention one thing. As you're looking through these REST representations, be curious. You know, I often have people ask me, well, how do I find that? Well, just look at what's there, and you know, if you see a resource that looks like it's interesting or has an odd name or you don't know what it is, query it. See what information it has. Remembering too that just because the information is there doesn't mean you're necessarily going to want to use it, but it can sometimes give you some other ideas about what data you could collect, or you know, if it turns out what you're really wanting isn't there or it doesn't quite exist the way you want it, what else could you do? So progress tracking, for example, there's no % complete, but hey, we could find schedules or the units done and units remaining. Well, it's pretty easy to calculate the % complete from that. So really be curious, explore, and be creative about how you use this information. Thanks for your time.